So, we're about to start the Exploring Monastic Life program this year. This, I think, is our 10th one, our 9th one, or our 10th one. We've had it every year at the Abbey. And it's actually one of the most important programs we do all year long, because the heart of our community is monastic life. Yeah, and looking around there, it's very difficult to find, for people to find places that can help them prepare for monastic life or explore it. Because in the U.S. we mostly have Dharma centers for lay people, and so the Geshis or Lamas or Rinpoches or Achans or, Sifus there are all geared towards helping the lay people with their practice. And so people with monastic aspiration are, kind of at the side, and also people who do ordain are also at the side, and so they don't always get a good monastic type education. So monastic life in the U.S. is something new. The different traditions all have some monasteries, and what's really nice is every year the Western monastics meet together. We have a Western Buddhist monastics gathering. It's not a conference. We don't have papers. We don't record anything. We just meet together as friends and share and learn from each other, and it's really wonderful. And you can see everybody's, really doing their best to set up a new tradition here in the West for Westerners. And we're kind of between two cultures, because our tradition comes from Asia, and the teachings come from Asia, and we want to preserve the pure Dharma, as the Buddha taught it, and yet we need to adjust to our own culture. And sometimes the Dharma and our culture are in conflict, and those of us who are monastics, the Dharma prevails, not the culture. What we often see in Dharma centers run by lay teachers is that the culture often prevails. Yeah, so it's difficult. We're right in this middle of a transition. It took years and centuries actually for Buddhism to get established in other Asian countries outside of India. It wasn't with the first generation of people. They started something, but it didn't really get rooted for several centuries until there was a lot of translation, there was a strong monastic community, and so on. And here in America, as we know, it's basically a Protestant country. Not so many people know about monastics, and there's certain ways of thinking that we have in the West and in Europe. That it's interesting when monasticism meets with those ideas. Okay? For example, the idea of equality, that everybody's equal. In one way, that completely matches with the Dharma, in the sense that the Buddha taught everybody, not just rich people, he taught people of all the different castes, all the different walks of life. The Sangha was open to everybody from all walks of life. The Buddha talked about everybody having the Buddha potential, the ability to become a fully awakened being. So in that way, everything's quite equal, On the other hand, you look at Buddhist monasteries in Asia, and there is a hierarchy, and within the Sangha itself, there's a hierarchy in the sense that the decisions, everybody has a voice, but the decisions are made by those who are fully ordained. Yeah, because there's different levels of ordination. And that makes sense from the perspective of it's a different kind of lifestyle. And when you haven't lived that lifestyle, you don't know what it's about. So you have to rely on the people who've lived it for a number of years to guide the community. And so in that sense, it makes sense. You know, you rely on the seniors. Yeah, our American thing, it's like everybody's equal. And so it's like, we come in, it's like, well, I just moved in here. I should have an equal vote with everybody. Yeah, and having lived in several different Western communities, Dharma communities, I've learned that does not work. Yeah, because then you have people who don't know anything about monastic life making decisions for the community. Doesn't work, yeah. So there's just this, you know, also, you know, there's the whole thing about gender, you know, and in many ways the teachings are gender equal, you know, in setting up different structures. Then they're not equal. You know, but gender equality is a very strong value in the West, and I think that, of course, I'm biased, but I don't think that Buddhism will really spread in the West unless there's gender equality. You know, I think following the institutional structures in Asia that were set up and that were influenced by Asian culture and Asian attitudes that are not specifically Dharma attitudes, I think those kinds of things can be changed, yeah, and have to be changed for the Dharma to spread and benefit people in our culture. So my main point is that we're kind of, you know, in the middle of this transition, you know, relying on our Asian teachers. Your generation, maybe not, maybe more of you have some Western teachers, but, you know, I was the first generation and, you know, wasn't anybody in the West. So, and then, you know, moving it into another culture where people don't understand what monastic life is, and where many of the Asian teachers who are bringing the Dharma here, like I said, are more interested in sharing the Dharma with a large number of people, with the lay people. And the Western lay teachers are not interested in setting up the Sangha as their lay teachers. So Ajahn Amaro made an interesting comment once about we're the people of color in more way than one in the West. But, you know, it's a beautiful challenge and an opportunity. And, you know, the Sangha has been the body of people that have held the teachings for 2,600 years. You know, it's been the Sangha that has been in charge, that has been charged with keeping the Vinaya and having the time to learn and practice the teachings and teach them to others. Yeah, so that's principally been the Sangha. It's, you know, in some Buddhist traditions, more or less, you know, there's been lay people involved. Nowadays, in all the traditions, there's more lay people involved in teaching. But traditionally, it's been the Sangha. And again, you can see why. Because the Sangha lives together in a community, so there is a place. Yeah, so people in society can, you know, they think, oh, where do I go for the Dharma? Oh, there's a monastery here, I can go. And there's people there who have committed their lives to learning and practicing the Dharma. Yeah. And even when I'm not there, I can remember that they're there practicing and studying and meditating, and it fills my heart with gratitude and hope. Yeah. People would not think that way about a lay teacher's house. Yeah. If your teacher's a lay, I'm going to see my lay teacher, who has a spouse and kids and the TV's going, and, they have a middle-class lifestyle. And it's just, and the spouse is kind of going, hey, there's all these people coming into the house. Can't we have some privacy here? Yeah, we want some family life. So a layperson's house can't act as that place that society looks to as, okay, there's a place where you go and you do a certain thing, okay? And by having the Sangha in a way acts as a form of conscience for society. Okay? In the sense that our values are different than lay people's values. How we're choosing to spend our life, what we're doing with our time is different. And so in that way, we're kind of a conscience for a secular society, or even a religious society, because we're asking important questions, and we're embodying a certain decision to live in a particular way that is swimming upstream from the way most people live. Okay, so Sangha questions things. Sangha questions, why do we have a consumer materialistic society? What is the purpose? Why are we using more of our fair share of the world's resources to buy more and more, to make and then to buy more and more things that we don't really need? Yeah. Why are things made to be destroyed so that people will want the latest model the next year? Yeah. So the Sangha asks these kinds of questions because our core value is simplicity in lifestyle. Okay. Now, many of you may come here and say, well, this doesn't look too simple. You have a new $2 million building there. What are you talking about, simplicity? Yeah, we built that building primarily for the lay guests, because we were all living when we first moved here, in Ananda Hall. Yeah, that got too small, so we built Gautami. The kitchen, is too small in Ananda. It's a family kitchen as the community was growing, and especially when we had retreats, we couldn't work in that kitchen. We needed more rooms for guests. We needed a bigger kitchen, a bigger dining room. Okay, so that got built, and it was the lay people who donated the money for building it, because they believe in what we're doing, and they also want to be able to come and partake of the Dharma here. So we'll be spending a long time, on the during this course, talking about the values that Sangha has and how we question things in society, how we're different than regular society. One of the most striking things is that the Sangha is celibate, and throughout history, sexual pleasure has been the delight of, most people, and especially now when sex is used to sell everything, and it's in every advertisement, every TV program, even in the Buddhist magazines. What images do they use to advertise things? Young, attractive, sexy-looking people. Yeah, because that's what's valued in society. And we're saying, hey folks, sex is not all there is in the world, and it's not really the greatest pleasure. And it ties you to samsara and causes one rebirth after another. And you haven't had enough rebirths. Yeah? Yeah, little fly, we're talking to you too. Yes, you haven't had enough rebirths. I'm glad you're hearing some teachings. They say it puts good imprints on their mind, so maybe next lifetime. Come back. Yeah. Yeah, so really questioning that. Yeah? Why do you need to have a sex life? You know, most lay people go, when you ask that question, like, but it's natural, you know? And His Holiness says, well, this is one area when we're trying to be liberated where we're going against nature. Yeah? And it's done for a specific reason. Okay? And most people, especially in the West, it's like they tremble when you mention celibacy, and they don't like the idea at all. And then they say, well, you know, you're just, what is it? You are repressing your sexuality. You are afraid of intimate relationships. You know, they make all these kind of assumptions and accusations that are not true at all. And I think it's simply because the idea of being celibate is just so antithetical to how they want to live, that, you know, they have to say that to make what they're doing okay. Yeah, having been married and had enough sex to fill a few lifetimes, I can say that, you know, it's really nice to be celibate. Yeah, it's such a relief to be celibate. One of my teachers, Lama Yeshe, used to say, you know, most of your life you're celibate. Yeah, it's not like you're having sex 24/7. Most of your life you're not having sex. So what is the big deal? Yeah, but, you know, that's a big deal in society that values sensual pleasure. Okay. The idea of not having a family, again, completely shocking to Western society. You know, because I don't know about you, but I had my whole life laid out when I was a kid, you know. I was going to grow up, okay, go to college, get a good job, make a lot of money, yeah, buy a nice house, have children, yeah, do all sorts of family activities with my family, get richer and richer, yeah, and then die. The die wasn't, my parents didn't want that, but that comes with the package, you know? At your planned time. Right. Which is never. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, that's the vision of life I was raised with. I don't know about you. Were you raised with that kind of vision of that's what you were supposed to do, that's what a good life was? Yeah? And then, you know, what do monastics do? They say, well, maybe it's not the good life. Maybe there's a better life. Maybe there's a different purpose for leading your life, you know, rather than to produce children. How about that? Everybody goes. Yeah? So, you know, in these ways, the Sangha is really, you know, we question society. We're kind of a conscience for society. When society goes to war, the Sangha says, why? Yeah? Why are you killing people? We have a precept against killing. And not only do we have a precept, but everybody wants to live as badly as we do. So what right do we have to take anybody else's life? Yeah, what right do we have to bomb and destroy their property? Yeah? So again, you know, we ask society that question just by the way we live. Okay? So, you know, the Sangha, there's power to being in this group that lives in a certain way. Yeah, and I really emphasize living in a group because in the West now many people ordain, and because of there's no Sangha communities or monasteries or whatever, and because people don't understand the purpose of the Sangha, then they are very much left to their own devices and wind up living in apartments in the city, working at jobs, and then putting on their robes and going to the Dharma Center in the evening. Yeah, which is very difficult to live and keep your precepts that way. And again, one person alone doesn't have that power to ask those questions, as you do when there's a group living a specific lifestyle that society sees. Okay? So, there's something quite special about the Sangha community. And Buddha set us up as a community. Yeah, although people were originally wanderers, people were set up as a community. There are certain Sangha activities, we'll get into this later on, that we do together as a group, that the Buddha required that we do together as a group, that are beautiful ceremonies and activities that really strengthen our practice as a group and as individuals as well. Because the idea of living in a Sangha community where people have the same precepts, it's like living in a forest, like being a tree in a forest, and you're surrounded by other trees, and you're all growing up. Yeah, so everybody's growing in the same direction because you have the same values and the same purpose. Yeah, when you live on your own, you can grow any way you want to because you're influenced by society, by the lay people around you, and so on. So it's much more difficult to grow straight according to the precepts because you just don't have the support and the structure. Okay? So all of you have come here for a variety of reasons, which we will explore. Some of you may be interested in monastic life. Some of you may have gone beyond interest and aspire for monastic life. Some of you may have gone beyond that and be determined to live as a monastic. So there's going to be people here with different levels, not different levels, but different, people are at different places in your practice. Okay? And the purpose of the program is just to help you wherever you are in your practice. Yeah? The purpose is not to make it so that at the end of 2.5 weeks you have a firm decision. Yeah. There is no pressure. It's the purpose of the program is to benefit and to help you see what monastic life entails, and to start asking some of the serious questions and doing some of the internal investigation that being a monastic entails. Yeah? So it's just the tip of the iceberg. Well, the different ideas and things that we're introducing here, and then you take it home with you and you explore some more, and you use it in your practice and see what happens. Okay, I must say that the EML course is the one course during the year where I can be totally frank. Okay, I'm always frank. I never kind of, I never say what I don't mean, okay, in that sense. That's something I have a strong aspiration to, is always speak truthfully. However, I will ask questions in a certain way when lay people ask them that is a different way than I answer them when monastics ask them. Okay? So here, I'm assuming that you have that interest and or aspiration and or determination, so I can talk totally as if I were talking to monastics. Okay? So, you know, some of what I say may be different than what you've heard before, and some of it might jar you. I remember EML some years ago, there was a young man here, and when I started talking about the disadvantages of romantic relationships, he just, you know, it really pushed a button for him. But, you know, I'm assuming that you have some interest and know that monastics are celibate. And so know that, you know, our view of romantic relationships is different than the rest of society, you know. And I'm going to tell you quite frankly, they're headaches. Yeah. And, you know, having been married myself, I speak from experience. I wasn't born as a nun, you know, come out of the womb wearing this, you know. So, yeah, I can speak from experience about that, too. So, yeah, so it's the one course where I can just, okay, here it is, everybody. Yeah. And ask you to check from your own experience. You know, does this resonate with you? Because that's the whole idea in asking these questions and bringing up different topics, is to get you to look in your own experience about what's going on. Okay? So it isn't like, okay, yeah, this outfit is the greatest outfit to wear, and, you know, let's all dress up. Halloween's coming, you know. It's not like that, you know. Oh, we want more people on our team. It's you know, kind of, how do you use the Dharma to really investigate inside and check what the Buddha's teaching in a very, very deep and personal way. Okay? Because the foundation motivation for taking precepts is renunciation of samsara. Yeah, in other words, wanting to get out of samsara. Now, it's not like all of us have actual spontaneous renunciation, but we have to have some feeling that samsara is a hell pit and we want to get out. Yeah. And if you don't have that feeling, then really putting on robes is like playing dress up. Okay? So there has to be some feeling that, you know, I want to get out of samsara. I don't want to keep getting reborn under the influence of afflictions and karma again and again and again and again, because I've been there, done that, and got too many T-shirts already, you know? And this life is a precious human life with opportunities I've never had before, you know, and I want to free myself, and, you know, I want to generate the motivation to free everybody else as well, and generate the bodhicitta aspiring for full awakening for the benefit of beings. And that's my motivation. And it's fabricated. It's not spontaneous, because the mind's still overwhelmed by the 8 worldly concerns. Yeah, but there's some feeling that life is more than what TV presents to us. Yeah, that there's something else that is important in life besides growing up, going to school, getting your career, making money, having kids, and dying. You know, that there's something more important that we can use our life for. Okay? Okay, so tonight, what I thought we would do, we do chanting three nights a week for about a half an hour. And there's some videos where you can watch in in your break times and whatever, that explain about the chanting, how to think, how to meditate while we're doing it. But I thought we will do the chanting, and then there's a little ceremony that I put together that we do for each EML. And it's a ceremony to request training for exploring monastic life. And it's a little ceremony where, maybe I'll pass it out, and then you can take a minute to read it. Yeah, okay. I think. I think that. Okay, there are some. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so just take a minute and read it. Okay. So we do this because I think it's quite helpful, for you to kind of make some commitment, because monastic life is a commitment, to make some commitment for the period of time that you're living here, to keep the precepts plus the 5 precepts plus celibacy, and I think it's helpful for people to do that, and to what you're saying here is already a step in in cultivating the motivation for monastic life. Okay, because what you're saying here is, I need help. Okay, I mean, we'll just be frank. My mind's a mess. I need help. Yeah. Right? My mind's a mess. I need help. Yeah. And so I'm requesting people who are a little bit further ahead than I am, on the monastic path, to give me that help and help guide me so that I can tame my mind, because I really want to abandon negativity and create virtue and, go for liberation and awakening. Okay, so kind of stating our motivation and requesting that assistance. Okay, and I think that's important to do, and that kind of, it forms part of the structure of what living in a Sangha community is about, is you're all helping each other so that we all grow in the same direction. Mm-hmm. So I thought we would do this after the chanting tonight, and then you can go downstairs and have your regular meditation session. Okay, if you want, I can hold on to the sheets, and then it might be easier. But I wanted you to have an idea of what we're doing. If you have any qualms with saying any of that, please tell me. I mean, do you have questions or qualms or anything? No? Oh, yeah. Yeah, Brian has to leave on the 12th, so, yeah. We know that already. So the whole time for you means until the 12th. Okay. Then also, some of you may have taken refuge in the 5 lay precepts. Some of you haven't. So one person's requested already to take them. So we can do that ceremony, during the course. If you want to take refuge in precepts, please let me know. And then, okay, to really acknowledge that all of you are coming from similar backgrounds and different backgrounds. There's a similar way of thinking, and we've all had different experiences in our life, and we've all had different connections with the Dharma so far. Yeah? And so, one person, you're coming from a Theravada perspective, you're coming from the Shambhala perspective, you're coming from, having studied with other teachers, and you too, and, so everybody's coming from different perspectives, and it's really important when you're here to have a very big, broad mind, okay? Because the thing is, our object of refuge, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, is the same object of refuge, no matter what Buddhist tradition you train in. Okay? We have the same refuge. And, sometimes I think that in the West, we just get too... okay, let's put it this way. In Asia, they didn't have so many means of communication. It wasn't easy to travel. So people from different Buddhist traditions didn't know much about each other. Yeah. And so very early on, people developed different ideas about other Buddhist traditions, not because they actually met those people or practiced with those people, but just because they heard things. And those ideas got concretized and got passed down from generation to generation, so that today you wind up with a lot of sectarianism, due to this. And this is something that I think is so damaging to the existence of the Buddha Dharma in the world, is this kind of thing of, okay, here's my tradition, and who are you? Yeah. Why are you acting like that? And so it just brings a lot of conflict. His Holiness Dalai Lama there's a book coming out in October, November that I played a role in, and the purpose of the book is so people from different Buddhist traditions can learn how other Buddhists practice and what the teachings are in those other traditions, so that we can get rid of some of this unnecessary sectarianism. Yeah. And so to acknowledge, yes, we have all the Buddhist traditions are centered in the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path. Everybody talks about the 3 characteristics. Yeah, impermanence, dukkha, selflessness. They may talk about these things in slightly different ways. Their way of meditating on these things may be slightly different. But the values, the principles are the same, and where people are going is the same. Okay? In terms of the Vinaya, different traditions have different ways of keeping the Vinaya. And it depends a lot on the society where the Dharma went, how people in those traditions keep the Vinaya. When Buddhism went to Sri Lanka, when it went to Southeast Asia, it was going to places with a hot climate. Okay? Going on Pindapat, on alms round, was very easy because it was hot. Yeah? You could walk around places. There wasn't snow on the ground. It wasn't freezing. There were a reasonable number of people who were mendicants. And that was a tradition in the society already, In India, when the Buddha lived, that's how there was already so many different traditions of mendicants, so many people going on Pindapat, living on alms. Okay? So that's easy to transport into a culture where it's warm. When Buddhism went to China, what happened is, because you kind of have to live near a village to go on Pindapat, is that if they were in the villages or the cities especially, then the court, would draw them in, and they would wind up getting involved in all sorts of politics. The Sangha did not want to get involved in Chinese politics, so they moved out to the mountains. Yeah? So once they moved out to the mountains, there wasn't a ready supply of food there. Okay? So they started gardening, and they started, doing agriculture, something which, is counter to the precepts. But you can see the reason why they did it was a good reason, because certainly doing their agriculture was much better than getting dragged in involuntarily into the machinations of the Chinese court and Chinese officials. Okay, so there's different ways, that Buddhism adapted. Yeah. Similarly, when Buddhism went to China, only when Buddhism was in India, the bright saffron color, the really bright orange, was and still is the color that wandering mendicants wore. Yeah, so it wasn't unusual for people to be wearing this color. They were recognized as wandering mendicants, and that color was considered an ugly color, so people who renounced should wear that. When Buddhism went to China, only the emperor was allowed to wear a saffron and gold color. So they were very scandalized if the monastics wore something like that. Yeah, so in Chinese culture, if you're expressing a simple lifestyle and renunciation, you wear brown, you wear black, you wear gray. Okay? In India, it was hot. You went with this arm uncovered. In China, they were scandalized. Everybody put on sleeves. Okay? Because of the culture. Nobody walked around with, sleeveless things. When Buddhism went to Tibet, they didn't have the color to make the bright saffron, so they made it this color saffron. Okay, they didn't have the dye to do the other thing. In Buddhism, you had a quarter of the male population wearing robes. Okay, could you imagine a quarter of the population going on Pindapat in the villages every day? Yeah? There would be a traffic jam. And all the lay people would run out of food trying to feed that many people. Yeah? So, again, the style of eating changed. And on one hand, people brought food to the Tibetan monasteries. And then on the other hand, the monasteries bought food. Okay? And you could see when you have that many people, the society can't support that number of people on alms. It doesn't work. Yeah. Here Buddhism is coming to the West, so it's going to be done in a different way still. So there's some traditions, carrying on the Theravada way. They will go on Pindapat. Some of my friends have done that. They have to go to town and get a parade permit. Yeah? The monastics at Shasta Abbey, they have to, you have to go and get a parade permit because you're walking in single file down the street. Yeah? Other people practice where the food is brought to the monastery. The monastics don't cook it. The lay people cook it. But for many lay people in America, that's very inconvenient. They have jobs, They can't be there until noon to cook the food and offer it. Yeah, it doesn't work for everybody. So again, some of these kinds of things, they have to change according to the culture. What we decided to do here at the Abbey was people offer food. So all of you, I think have brought food offerings. And then all the other guests, we don't buy any food ourselves, zip. Yeah, all the food's offered. But we're in the middle of nowhere. Who's going to come and cook for a community of people in the middle of nowhere every day? That's not going to happen. Okay? And so we cook the food ourselves. But it's food offered to us. When I started the Abbey and said that we weren't going to buy any of our own food, the people told me I was crazy. They said, you will starve. People will not bring you food out of here. Yeah? Who will bring you food in the middle of nowhere? Yeah? Especially in the snow in the winter. Yeah? So I said, well, let's try it. So we tried it. It's worked. We haven't starved. There was one day when the cupboards were pretty empty, okay? That happened the first year. But after that, we haven't, nothing. Yeah? I mean, we have plentiful food. So it worked. Yeah?
Do people donate money specifically for food so that someone, a layperson, can go out and buy food and bring it in? Because it's done specifically?
Yeah. Yeah. Some people, they live in different parts of the country, so they can't. Some people do send us boxes of food, but some people, they send it, here, and then lay people. There's a group in Coeur d'Alene that call every week, or in Spokane, they call every week or two, and they say, do you need anything? We want to make an offering. And so they use the money that's been sent to them by people from other places too. Yeah. So we do that. So, that's why, we offer the food before we eat, and we think of the kindness of others, and why we dedicate the merit to all the sponsors and the benefactors after the meal. We do the chanting after the meal, you'll see. Because we're really living due to the kindness of other people. Okay? So what I'm getting at here is that people are going to do things differently in different countries, in different groups, in different traditions. And we have to have a big mind to encompass that there's many ways of doing things and many ways of thinking. Yeah? And, instead of a narrow mind of like, okay, this is what I know. This is right. Everybody else is wrong. Yeah? And, for the first years of my ordination, I was living in India and Nepal in the Tibetan community, so very little exposure to anything else. And then my teacher sent me to Singapore. Many people don't know where Singapore is. It's the end of the Malay Peninsula in Southeast Asia. And all of a sudden in Singapore, there's like so many different Buddhist traditions, because people from Thailand came there, from Sri Lanka came there, from China came there. There were just a few Tibetan centers when I came, not very many. Now there's many more. But, all of a sudden I was exposed to all these Buddhist traditions, and people in Singapore, they went to many different temples. There was really kind of a very open feeling, and so people would make offerings at different temples. They would go to teachings from different teachers, and I would be invited. And even now I go to Singapore every year. I speak in Theravada temples. I think I speak in Chinese temples. Yeah, I don't speak so much in Tibetan temples there anymore. It's really kind of strange. But, for me, it was like a big eye-opener because, I spoke English, and so at Singapore, this was like 25 years ago, actually almost 30 years ago, the young people were English ed, their parents were Chinese ed. So the Chinese temples took care of the people who spoke Chinese, and the Theravada and Tibetan took care of the people who spoke English. So here I am all of a sudden working with all these Theravada people, and I'm hearing like all these misconceptions that the different Buddhist traditions have about each other. Okay, so in the Tibetan community, they look at Theravada people and say, you people are selfish. You know, you only want your own liberation. And I get there and I see people meditating on love and compassion and, you know, very kind, you know, people with lots of compassion. You know, the Theravadas that I met in Singapore. And then I learned that the Theravadas look at the Tibetans and say, you guys are not keeping Vinaya very well at all. Look what you're doing. You know, you drive cars and you eat in the afternoon, and you know, and so you know, they had that view of the Tibetans. And then the Tibetans looked at the Chinese and thought, all these people are Hoshang. They're all doing blank-minded meditation, because there was a big debate in Tibet in the late 8th century. 9th century, you know, about styles of meditation, and the Indian tradition, you know, kind of won the debate. So then after that, all these Chinese are doing blank-minded meditation. They're not meditating properly. And, you know, and then I go and I meet all these Chinese monastics, and they're not doing blank-minded meditation, you know. But the Chinese monastics look at the Tibetans and they say, oh, well, you practice Tantra, so you're practicing magic. Yeah, and I remember being, one day I was walking in a park in Singapore, and this man came up and said, please tell me my lucky number. And I said, I'm incapable of telling you your lucky number. Well, please, you practice Tibetan Buddhism, don't you do these kinds of things? No, we don't. You know, and he was so surprised, you know. No, we don't practice magic, sorry. You know, so there's all these kinds of old misconceptions that are passed down. And so in the West now, we have the opportunity to actually meet people who practice in different traditions and talk to them. And it's really wonderful because it's an opportunity for us to broaden our mind, you know, and understand how different traditions think. Okay, personally speaking, I think it's helpful when we're training. You know, you kind of have to settle on a teacher, you know, or a group of teachers who are teaching you meditation in a similar way. Yeah, because if Monday night you're going to Theravada, and Tuesday night you're doing Chinese Zen, and Wednesday night you're doing Chinese Pure Land, and Thursday night you're doing Tibetan Tantra, and Friday night you're doing Lamrim meditation, and Saturday night you're going to go to the Sufi people, and Sunday night you're doing crystals, you know, you're going to get confused. So I think it's good, you know, to get settled, you know, in a system and really go deeply, yeah. But then to learn about the other traditions, to see how what we learn can complement our own practice. Okay? And so what you have now in America, which is kind of amazing, is like when His Holiness the Dalai Lama teaches, you have people from all the different Buddhist traditions attending the teachings. And His Holiness asks the people from all the different traditions to do some chanting at the beginning of the teachings in their own language, you know, and it's really beautiful. Yeah. So, you know, there's much more crossover now. And again, you know, like kind of get grounded in one thing, but enlarge your scope and your appreciation. Because, you know, for me personally, I see the variety of things that the Buddha taught and the variety of the way things are done. And it signifies to me what an incredible skillful teacher the Buddha was. You know, he didn't teach one size fits all. Yeah, he taught, okay, here's the path to awakening. Yeah. And within that, there's wiggle room. Yeah, because different people are going to approach it in different ways, and different people in different countries or with different dispositions will emphasize some points and de-emphasize other points, whereas in another country or another tradition they will emphasize those points not emphasized here and de-emphasize the ones emphasized here. But all of them, come back to the common refuge and the common Four Noble Truths. And to meditation, love, and compassion. Okay, and the 3 higher trainings. And so to really see, the Buddha's skill and appreciate what an incredibly wise teacher the Buddha was. Yeah? And yet, still have our own way of practicing without making soup. Okay? Making soup is like, you take a little bit from everything, you mix it together, and like soup, that's what you do with soup. A little bit of this, all your leftovers you put together and you make soup. Yeah? So people sometimes tend to do that. I'll take all the Dharma points that I agree with and put them together, and that's what I'll practice. Yeah? And anything I don't agree with, that must be wrong. Okay? So I think we need to have a wider, a broader mind than that. And let ourselves, be willing to be challenged. Yeah? Yeah? Dharma should challenge us. If Dharma doesn't challenge us, if it doesn't make us feel slightly uncomfortable inside, then it's not working. It's not going to counteract our attachment to the happiness of only this life. It's not going to counteract all of our wrong conceptions. If all we do is take what feels completely comfortable to our ego. Okay, so we will be challenged. And that's good. Nothing wrong with being challenged. And sometimes you get confused when you're challenged. That's okay. Yeah, we're not asking people to okay, the Buddha said this or the teacher said this. You go Ali Ali Salami, I believe, and you never ask a question. That's ridiculous. Okay, the Buddha wanted people to think for themselves, and by thinking for yourself, that's how you integrate the teachings in your mind. Okay, and so some ideas, may be harder than others for you. Yeah, or some practices may push some buttons or, really big. That's okay. That's okay. Don't worry about it if that happens. It's not a big deal. Yeah, come and talk to somebody. Yeah, your buttons will get pushed. Go and talk to somebody. It's fine. We'll help you through. Okay. What else did I have to say? One practical thing is we'll have the discussion group, each day, the second session. And we usually do that out in the garden unless there's too many yellow jackets or too much heat. So we'll see how it is. There were more of the metal chairs with the orange cushions. I don't know where they went, because I only saw 3 of them out there, and there's usually 6. Yeah, so if you guys have been around, maybe check the... Yeah, but see if you can find the other cushions, because it's a lot more comfortable. And check the deck of Shanti cabin, the teacher's cabin. Maybe they got moved there. Or maybe in the community room. I don't know where they could have gotten moved. Yeah, but they're more comfortable to sit on. Okay. Okay, so questions, comments? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's easier just to be there. Mm-hmm.
So Venerable, on your point about diversity of traditions, I think we're at a really interesting time in America where, traditions are integrating, assimilating, and in some ways innovating, right? Because of the need to adapt. And amidst that innovation, there can be distortion, right? And I think we've seen examples of that. And the one that comes to my mind right now is like with Geshe Michael Roach and what he was doing with his followers, and which are not Dharma, and don't have that same foundation, but still call themselves Buddhists. So I'm wondering if you have any pointers for identifying those.
Yeah, every tradition has groups within it that have really gone out in, left field or right field somewhere. I think the basic thing is to know the basic Buddhist teachings and what the Buddha taught. And then you see if what these teachers and their behavior, if it's corresponding to that. If it's not, then even if they call themselves Buddhist, you leave it aside. Yeah. 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 Yeah, Trungpa was well known at his time. He wasn't well respected by everybody at his time because he was controversial. Yeah, and as I understand it, at least many years ago, the Shambhala was set up as, it was explicitly said to not be Buddhist. Yeah, and there was the Buddhist part of the was it Vajradhatu organization at that time, and the Shambhala part of it, and they were distinct. And Judith Simmer-Brown took me, I was in Colorado, and she took me to the main center there, and she said, here's our Buddhist altar and here's our Shambhala altar. And so they were distinct. As I understand it from people now, the Sakyong is trying to bring them closer together. So it's a little bit confusing. Yeah, it's confusing. I mean, I'm not in the tradition, and it's confusing for me. So I can imagine what it is for people in the tradition. And as Judith explained it to me, there's people who are just going to remain much more on the Buddhist side, and not so much on the Shambhala side. Although I don't know how the Sakyong, well, he's guiding people in the organization now, so. With the Sakyong? Yeah. Yeah, this is one of the things is when there's a huge organization, yeah, you don't have as much personal contact, yeah. Yeah, my initial teachers too, when we started, it's like, there was a handful of us. And so, we were able to meet with our teachers individually. And then everything just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's thousands of people now. And so what I did, it's very difficult to see my, that teacher again. So I've cultivated relationships with some of my other teachers who have fewer students, who I can go, I have easier access. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, personally speaking, I do. Yeah. I think it's more important in the early years to be, especially as a monastic, to be with your teacher, and to get the monastic training. Because if you start, the first year of your monastic life is so important, because if you survive that year and you don't get much training, then you think, oh, well, I survived a year, so what I'm doing is okay. But you haven't even studied the precepts, so you don't know what you're breaking. Yeah, whereas if you're living somewhere in a community and there's a structure, then you're learning what to do and what not to do. And somebody's pointing that out to you, and that helps you establish really good habits at the beginning. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You have copies of this that
Let's see, I have the Bhikshuni Pratimoksha, which is the nuns' precepts. Yeah, I have a copy of the Bhikshu Pratimoksha, and in our library there is some too. I can't vouch for the translation because I haven't worked on that one as much. You know, I'm waiting for there to be some monks at the Abbey, and then work more on the translation of the Bhikshu one. The Bhikshuni one is you know, pretty. We've done a lot of work on the translation. So, actually, technically speaking, you're not supposed to read it before you're ordained. Yeah, the reason being, first, that they're afraid that it might scare you. Second, that you may, by learning all the precepts, get very critical of the Sangha and start picking at the Sangha for, oh, you aren't doing that right, you aren't doing that, and you aren't doing that. So for these two reasons, they usually say, you know, what I do feel is fine for people to read at the beginning is the 10 precepts that you take as a shramanera, shramanarika. Okay? So those are the novice precepts. And the thing is that all the detailed precepts, the Bhikshu and Bhikshuni precepts, are more specific instances of those 10 precepts. So the 10 precepts hit the general categories of things. So if you learn those and think about those, then later when you learn the other ones, it makes more sense. Okay? So the 10 precepts, you know, I think you're familiar with the 8. Let's go through anyway. Okay, so you have the 5 basic lay precepts, okay? To abandon killing, stealing, okay, sexual misconduct, which I call unwise and unkind sexual behavior for lay people, lying, and intoxicants, okay? When you go to the 8 precepts, the one-day precepts, or if they're also called the anagarika precepts, and this is what we give people at the Abbey to keep for a year before they become monastics. It's like a trial period where you keep 8 precepts to see what it's like. You don't wear robes, you wear kind of a blue suit of some sorts. Okay? So there you have those same 5, except it's celibacy, the third one's celibacy. And then you have to abandon sitting on high beds and seats, high luxurious beds and seats, to abandon singing, dancing, playing music, going to, you know, entertainment, movies, and that kind of thing, and wearing perfumes, garlands, and ornaments. Okay? Wearing deodorant is fine. Please do that. And then the last one is not eating, you know, between midday of one day and dawn of the next day. Okay? There are, you know, in our tradition, there are exceptions to that. If you're doing manual labor, if it's, you know, harsh weather and you're drenching wet, if you've been traveling, if you're ill, you know, so there are circumstances. Other traditions, I have a friend in the Theravada tradition, she had 2 heart attacks. She would not eat in the evening. And, you know, and I was going, this is your 2nd heart attack. We need you to live long, you know, please. But, you know, no, she wasn't going to eat in the evening, even though she told me it was extremely difficult for her. Okay? Okay, so those are the 8. Yeah? Then, with the 10, what you do is the one that was about not wearing perfume ornaments and garlands and stuff, and the one about singing, dancing, playing music, entertainment. Those are split into 2 different precepts, so that gives you 9. And then the added 10th one is not to touch gold or silver or money. Okay, this is another one that is not kept strictly. In some traditions keep it very strictly. Maybe strictly isn't the right word. People keep it differently. Yeah. I remember reading one thing. Somebody was saying, oh, I went in to visit this monk's room, and somehow, people had left a dime in his room, and he asked me please to take it and move it in another place. And I had such high regard for how he kept the Vinaya so purely. So that works for some people. For me, it's like, okay, a dime, I'll move it, It's okay. I don't have any attachment to that dime. In the Tibetan tradition, Chinese tradition, they handle money because the way they relate to society is different. In Theravada, some of them handle money in Theravada, actually. In the city temples they do. Others don't. So there's different ways of keeping that one. What we do here at the Abbey is we handle money. If it's the Abbey money, people make donations, so we, have to deposit it and so on. And then there's certain guidelines regarding personal money. You're in America, we don't ask people to give up all their savings, because in America they could turn around and sue you if they decided to disrobe after a few years. So we don't ask people to give up all their money. This is strange culture we have here. But what we say is, okay, you can keep it, but it can only be used for medical, dental, making offerings, traveling to teachings, or if your family won't pay for a ticket, if you go to visit your family, you can use that. But you cannot use it to buy, if you need, medical things, health kind of things, you can use it for that. But you cannot buy a new lamp for your room, or a different kind of blanket for your room, or your own this, your own that. Anything personal, it can't be used for anything like that. Okay, so that's how we do it here. Yeah, and But, people have to go into town and get things. We don't have a lay community living nearby who don't work, who can go into town and get us things, So we save up all the errands, and then, somebody goes into town and does that. So that's how we do it here. Yeah, in other traditions, I've seen people, just use money freely, go into stores and buy food, buy whatever they want. We don't do that. We restrict that, so people here don't do it. Okay, but again, there's different ways because people live in different lifestyles. Okay, so I think those 10, and we can go through them more about, what's the reason for doing those. Okay, it's very important to understand the reasons behind the different precepts. Okay. Mm-hmm.
What's the precept about? No dancing, music, shows. What about like documentary films?
Yeah. We say documentaries are fine. Yeah.
And then if it's like going further, this is my hardest one. I love movies, but I understand the restriction. I understand it's important. But then what if there's, teachers that are kind of gritty about prison life or about other types of hardships to people, but they are still teachers, but they're educational. Does that start to get kind of gray?
Yeah, on those, we really check up. And so, if we're going to watch something like that, we watch it here together as a community. We don't go out to the movie theater and watch anything. Yeah, but I mean, things that give you some kind of education around the world are good. But ones where there's just too much sex and too much violence, I mean, and that are basically for entertainment, things that, no. We have to, because we're so used to this day, we're just glued to screens, being entertained all the time. So that's why. If there's something somebody thinks that we should watch, then we really vet it first, and then we watch it together as a community.
A question about when you were talking about the Bhikshuni, the Vinaya, and then the Bhikshu one is not yet completely translated. You're talking about from the Chinese, the Dharma.
Yeah, the Dhammajatakta, right? Yeah, because in the Theravada, it's the full translation is there, and I think in the Tibetan it should be. Yeah, it is.
And how similar are those, say, the Chinese ones, Tibetan, and the Theravada?
They're very, very similar. Okay, the Vinaya, we'll talk more about this as time goes on, but they're very similar, especially when you consider they were passed down orally for many centuries. So in some categories, there's different numbers of precepts. One Vinaya may have one precept regarding this, and another may have several precepts just going into finer detail. But and sometimes when you get into the details about the precepts, there's some difference. But, overall, they're very, very similar. Okay. When you really get into the explicit things, then, this is different, this is different. But